All right, our live stream is running. I'm going to go ahead and start broadcasting so we can start letting people in.
Should we turn our video off too, do you think, or just leave it on?
No, you can leave it on. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep. I'm just going to turn mine off since I'll just be
Okay.
in the background.
Thanks,
fly on
Brian.
The wall. So if you look at the participants option, you'll see people start to trickle in. So people are entering now.
Sounds good.
And we're live.
What is going on back there, girl? Oops.
Hi, everybody. As you're joining, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat to all panelists and attendees. Welcome. I'm seeing lots of people introducing themselves as you join. Welcome. I'd love if you could just add in the chat who you are, where you're from. It's interesting to see you all joining. We're going to begin in about 2 minutes. Thank you for those of you who are joining and introducing yourselves in the chat. Looking forward to this session today. Okay, it's 9:30. I think I'd like to go ahead and get started. To respect everybody's time, we have our wonderful presenters here for an hour today. And I wanted to introduce myself. I am Stephanie Ikley Chang, and I work in the College of Education at San Jose State. And we have Brian Chung Dooley with us, who is our communications coordinator and man extraordinaire at the College of Education at San Jose State as well. The speakers that we have today are coming to us from technology teacher special assignment. So they've really been out there in their classrooms in elementary and in high school. So we have Nancy Minicozy and we have Lisa Nowakowski joining us today, and they'll be presenting on student voice, student choice. So you're going to get to hear lots of great ideas from them. And I would like to go ahead and go over our announcements today. This will be recorded, so everybody will have access to this webinar session after, and that will be sent out later on today, so you'll be able to review. Captions will be available in this recording, and the live captions address is there. The attendees video, so all of you participating, your video and audio, are automatically turned off, and that's because we have such a large group of people. But you will be able to ask questions in the chat, the Q&A, and we will be monitoring that and stopping along the way to pause for some questions. And also you can use the chat during the event to communicate when, with others, or answer some questions and things. That I will be monitoring the Q&A, and we'll pause along the way so we can try and get all those questions answered. So if we'd like to go ahead and turn it over to our wonderful presenters today, I'm going to let them go ahead and get started.
Awesome. So I'm getting ready to share the screen. And there we go. Yes, yes.
We can see it.
Awesome.
At least I
Thanks,
can.
Nancy. Oh, good. Well, you count too, so that's good.
Okay.
Hi. So we're going to be doing student choice and student voice today, or student voice and student choice. So Nancy, you want to introduce?
So hi, thank you so much for having me, and welcome to everybody that's here. Yes, we will be giving a link to the slide deck. I think that's the one thing we didn't do. So I'll take care of that during the presentation. I'm Nancy Minicozy. I am an I4 coach, which stands for Innovation, Instruction, Individualization, and Inspiration. So a long title. And Technology TOSA at Beverly Hills High School in Beverly Hills, California. And on Twitter, I'm Coffee Nancy.
Thank you. And I'm Lisa Nowakowski. I'm originally from Detroit. I just finished my 25th year of teaching, and I've taught in the classroom the entire 25 years. And next year, I will be a Tech TOSA in the King City Union School District, and you can find me on Twitter at NoahTechie. So excited to be here. Thank you. There we go. So why should we give students choice and voice? So we don't read this to you because you're all adults and you can read to yourself. But this is some research that we found to help support why students should have a voice and a choice within the classroom. I'll just give that a minute. Got to move some screens around. I haven't used this in a whole week, and I've already forgotten how to move screens around. So it really does help to the students to build ownership over their learning. They really get to express what they've learned in a comfortable format for themselves. Sometimes it's a creative way. Sometimes it's just an old school essay that they would prefer to do. It also helps the student-centered learning, and it engages students in their own success. And I know Nancy's had some really great student feedback about student voice and student choice.
Indeed, I have. So it was so good that I actually inserted it into this presentation. So I will show that to you in just a second. So the first thing we talk about is having students pick a topic for their own learning. Now, obviously, this isn't always possible, but there are many times when you can give students choice in what they learn. Lisa, if you could go to the next slide.
I did.
And there's my slide. So I had a teacher, you know, obviously everything was disrupted this past spring. Nothing really went the way we thought. And so I had a high school, he's an 11th grade history teacher. And he decided that he couldn't do his final in the regular way. So I suggested that he give his kids some choice in how they could show their learning. And the projects were so great that he came back to me and said, "Oh, look at these wonderful things my kids did." And I said, "Yes, they're really wonderful. And I would like to use them in a presentation that I'm doing about student voice and choice." So he gave me links to some of them, and I emailed the students because they're high school students, they're 11th graders, and I figured they could have choice about whether or not they felt comfortable having me share their projects with all of you. And so I emailed them to ask for permission, and one of them came back and said, yes, share it with anybody, because I believe that when students have the ability to choose, right, you can read, the kind of topics they are most passionate about, they can achieve great things. And one of the things that made my teacher's project so successful was not only did he give them choice in how they presented their learning, but he also gave them choice in what they could learn more about and present about. So if we go ahead, here's some of the examples of things that you can do. Now, you know, sometimes you can't, but occasionally you can give kids choice. For example, Lisa and I were talking about this. If your topic is persuasive writing, you know, and the old standby is, should we have uniforms in schools? Yes or no, right? But why does it have to be, why can't we give students choice as long as they do the research? And it's not a research project, it's a persuasive writing project. So they need to be clear that that standard is persuasive writing. But why can't they write about something to do with COVID-19? Or why can't they write about why my parents should let me get a dog? You know?
And piggybacking on that too, Nancy, is the idea that not only can you give them those choices, but you can also double it up with standards that you're already teaching in other subjects. So for example, when I was teaching 5th grade, that's such a weird statement to say, but when I was teaching 5th grade, the work up to the Revolutionary War is a very huge topic. So you can combine those issues of one of the topics that I had my students do with student voice and student choice was we researched the taxes and the reasons behind it. And we looked at primary sources, and we looked at why they were revolting against the taxes, but why the British government was giving the taxes. And then they were tasked with, picking a side and doing research, didn't care which side they picked. And I was that mean teacher who, no matter what side they picked, I would have an argument for the opposite, make them think. And then they would have to do a project that reflected their opinion. So I was combining a couple different standards there to make my life a little bit easier and have a little bit more of an engaging and more in-depth thought process for the kids as well.
And that's great. You could have even put in math with percentages and how much tax and all kinds of things. So you can combine if you're an elementary teacher. I saw we had some secondary teachers in here as well. So less effective there because you're teaching one subject, but you can connect multiple standards from your content area. Another way you can do it is really full on freedom with Genius Hour type research or hobby projects for elementary school. They can do Genius Hour too, where students learn and share what they learn with others. And that can also be combined with standards, but it can be a really free thing. And you will find that kids will work harder and longer if it's something that they are interested in.
That is true. You know, so again, always keeping the standards in mind and the pedagogy. So pedagogy always comes first, no matter what you're doing. So I'm going to move on. Ugh, there we go. So how do we get students started? So we kind of talked a little bit about that just now, but we can get students started in many ways. So this is something that I came up with for my classroom, and I gave you a link to it. It's on the bottom there. It's a bit.ly/VC template, and we'll be giving all of this to you at the end. As Nancy said, we're working on, we forgot to put a link to our slideshow, but we are happily give it to you. So, we have mediums. So these are all the different mediums that I gave my students a chance to use. It seems a bit overwhelming in the beginning. So what I had done with my students is we had done Flipgrid videos. And if you're not familiar with Flipgrid, we'll get into that soon enough. We had done each one of these ideas, TikTok, not actual TikTok, because again, 5th grade, and I don't want to, encourage that because you have to be 13 and my kids were not 13. But Matt Miller created a TikTok template using Google Slides, and it mimics what it looks like. So you can have that experience, right, Michelle? Flipgrid is awesome. Instagram, same thing. It's not actually an Instagram, it's just a template to what it looks like. So we had gone through all of these. So by the time that they had gotten this, I could keep adding to this particular document, and they knew what each one of those things were, so they had the ability to do it. With some kids, they can't handle all of that. So you kind of have to scale it down for them and say, okay, you get your choice of A or B, depending on the student. And you'll know your students, when that happens. So Nancy?
Absolutely. And you can do the same kind of thing in a secondary classroom. If you click on the link, and you'll be able to just type it in or click on it once you get the link to the slides. You'll see that it's very similar, but it's just kind of, I made it look a little bit more secondary, and we gave them some slightly more complicated options, not complicated, but just a little more secondary appropriate. So for example, the magazine cover, that wasn't a choice for the elementary. It's a little bit much for them, but we put it in for secondary. So it can be done in a very similar way. And once you have this set up, you can use it for anything. It's not like you're making this giant thing and spending a lot of time and putting in all the links and then you're never going to use it again. You can literally use it for everything.
Work smarter, not harder. I am a huge fan of that.
As am I, as you all should be if you're not. Just saying.
Here are just some examples that we have that these are from the past few years that I've had with my students. So I had a student this year, the blog, fantastic. And these are all clickable. So when you do get this, I'm not going to jump out and jump back in because that becomes ugly on this. But I had a student this year and all my students had blogs. I used EduBlogs. There are several different platforms you can use. That just happens to be the one that I used. And he just wrote stories. He just enjoyed writing these stories, and he was a voracious reader. And so he just had this wild imagination. And so the kids would be like, hey, can you write another one? And they just loved his writing. And so he had an outlet, and that was just something that he wanted to do. So that was just an outlet for him. While having all of my students having a blog, there were times that they did have to write on their blogs, and they were very specific and they were very driven. My students 2 years ago now created a podcast, and they were super interested in our school and our school history, and why was it named, the Arts Magnet, and what was it before that? And they really started delving into the history of not just our school, but also our town. And we ended up bringing in a local historian, and my students interviewed them, the local historians. I think there was 2 of them, and they interviewed them to see, what was going on with our town. And they, they reported out. Now that sounds really great, and you're going to go and look that podcast up, and there's like 2 or 3 episodes on it, because last year's class, that wasn't their jam. Like they were just like meh, they didn't really care. But the previous year I had a group of kids who were like, now we're all in. So again, it's just a choice. I just go with it. They liked it, they didn't like it. Here's a video just using like Screencastify, and I used it to have my students explain answers and how they got a particular answer in something. So I'm doing a quick check. And then this is an example of an Instagram story, and you can tell it is a template and it's not actually Instagram. And we were just playing around with it. It was the first time that they had been introduced to this. So it was a low impact activity for them to do, but it had a lot of, it was, low floor, high ceiling sort of thing. So easy to get in on the ground floor. They could take it to whatever heights they wanted to go to. And they just had a really good time with it.
Okay, so before I share the secondary examples, I want to respond to one of the comments in the chat from Laura. So before I was in high school this year, I was in elementary for many years. And her comment was, I'm wondering if students in primary could use voice to text in order to have their own blogs. They absolutely could. I think you could also do a kind of video blog or an audio blog, similar to a podcast. And I think Seesaw has some options for that as well. I think they may have a blog option. So, but yes, they absolutely could. And I think that would be great. So these are the secondary examples. These are from my teacher's, his final project. So he had a choice of 3 prompts, and I linked to the original assignment in the bottom corner there. He had a choice of 3 prompts. Each of them was pretty involved because this was a final. So students could pick any of the 3 prompts, and then they could use anything they wanted to answer those prompts. And so some of the examples that he shared, he said, first of all, he told me that the results were spectacular. He didn't expect it to be this good. And he also said grading was much more fun than it was when he just assigned everybody an essay or a big final exam. But so as you can see, there were many different options, and you can click and visit all of these. So he got newscasts, he got websites, he got newspapers. I loved the crash course video. He got video analysis, and many of these were also supported by writing. So if you click on the additional examples, you'll see links to these and all the things that the students submitted, including some other students whose work did not fit on this slide. So really, even though you might think, oh, well, I can't do this, yeah, I can't give students choice because I have standards to cover. You can, because his standard was showing the effect of different things that happened during the 20th century. And so he had students address and cover those events in many different ways. So before we go on, or actually, let's go to the next slide and then we'll do some questions.
Do you create rubrics for each project? Do I? Not always. I think it depends. I'm just going to be honest with you out there. I've tried creating rubrics that are generic because I hate creating rubrics for one specific project. It drives me banana pants. I, like Nancy had said before, try to create one document. So when I do create rubrics, I try to make them pretty generic so that I can use them for multiple projects or yeah, so the example that I had before, sorry, going back to the 5th grade and the taxes, I actually did have a rubric for that one and what they needed to hit in all 3, in the areas that I was looking at. So that was a very, very specific project. While the topic was very specific, their way of showing their learning was very open. So as long as they showed that, I didn't care, as long as they hit all of the points on the rubric that I was looking for.
And for secondary, a lot of times teachers will make kind of a, I don't want to say a generic rubric, but they'll
Multi-purposeful.
multi. Is that even a word?
It is now.
So really, I mean, you have to go back and think about what your standard is. What are you assessing? So like Bobby, teacher's name is Bobby. Bobby wanted to address a specific standard from the US history standards about the influence, understanding the influence of different events in the 20th century. So I'm a big fan of the single point rubric. Either they did it or they didn't do it, right? So you can go ahead and just do that. And then typically, and you might have a rubric point about their presentation. Did their presentation meet the goal or did it not? Was it clear and easy to understand or was it not? Did it communicate the information that was asked for or did it not? And you can kind of reuse those. I think that rubrics are especially helpful for high school students because they are the ones, they will look at a rubric. Not everybody, I mean, let's be honest, but many students, if you give the rubric when you give the assignment, then they know what is going to be assessed and they can frame their project and make sure that they include everything. Rubric, yes, Prativa, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Rubric is a tool for self-assessment. So before they ever give it to you, they're looking at the rubric. Did I do this? Did I do that?
And Lara also brought up the point that the strength in a general rubric or the multi-purposeful, love that new word, you can write that down, rubric is that you focus on the qualities that you want that cut across possible products. She says it gets us away from those checklist rubrics, which I absolutely agree. Having 3 images, I think it depends. Like with that 3 images, if you're just saying have 3 images versus 3 images that represent maybe a characteristic of something, that kind of goes a little bit deeper. So, but I generally agree. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And to go back to the has 3 images, if you click on the link and look at what Bobby's original project assignment was, he did ask the students to include, I can't remember, I want to say it was 2 cartoons, political cartoons, right? At least 2 political cartoons in their project. But part of that is because political cartoons are part of the standard. And part of that is also to make sure they understand. So it's not, did they include 2 political cartoons, but when he is looking at that, he's looking to see, did the images and whatever else they put in, did it support the learning and did it support the demonstration of learning? Rubric needs to be equitable. Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
And that's another reason to offer choice, by the way, is that a lot of times if you say, okay, write an essay, unless your standard is essay writing, oftentimes that's very challenging for English learners, and they might do better with spoken words. I mean, I was a technology coach and did a lot of other things. I was actually a language teacher, and in my very first teaching job, I was a TA and taught Italian. And I was much more comfortable speaking than writing, as many of our English learners are. So they might prefer, if it isn't available option, to do some kind of demonstration of learning that involves speaking rather than writing.
And I was speaking with a friend recently, and we were talking about equitability and, how some of our choices impact the cultural norms in a particular student's home or their culture of how they're being raised. And sometimes with probably more with younger students, but I haven't had experience with secondary. that we tell them, okay, you're going to make a flip grid. And like, that is like the one thing, or it's a video. Well, we have some students who that's not a part of who they are. They don't like to talk online. They don't like to make videos of themselves. And it's really intimidating for them to do something like that. So by giving them the choice, they're also then finding that thing that, like Nancy, you were saying with, you know, having the equitability with, you know, second language learners, is they also then go, okay, like, I don't feel like making this video, but I can do this. And oftentimes I had students who would have some crazy idea that I didn't even think of. And because I had a good enough relationship with my students, they could come to me and say, hey, I want to do, and they would explain their project. And it was something that was completely mind blowing. And I was like, go for it. Yeah, the bag breathing is a metaphor for a stressful spring.
Yes.
It was stressful for everybody around. Absolutely. All right. So
yeah, and actually it also is what you were saying. There are students in secondary who, you know, don't want to make flip grids, or maybe don't want to show their house, right? So definitely want to think about equity all the time and give choices. All right.
And going back to the flip grid for just a moment, for those of you who are in the programs, your student programs right now, if your students in grades say, ooh, about 5th grade to 7th, maybe 8th grade are not all into flip grid, it's not you, it's them. I've talked to enough teachers, even in our district, like there hits a weird point in about 5th grade, and it lasts through about middle school that they're just not into it. Like they're just all nervous and self-conscious, and it's that age period. So don't freak out.
The filters help.
Yes, yes.
Yes, everybody in middle school is kind of crazed about how they look. Picking just a couple of things. Once students have decided, and they're working on whatever it is that they're working on their learning, and this can be done all through, doesn't have to be just at the end, then we need a way for them to share their learning with us, whether it's for formative or summative purposes. And so we pick a medium, and what we mean by medium is a way for students to demonstrate their learning. All right, I paused, but Lisa didn't pick up on my cue, so I'm going to keep going.
Yes, you keep going, homegirl.
I basically, we'll keep going until somebody just throws a roadblock up in front of me. So this is a way for them to show their learning, and they may not know how to show that. So we might have to explain that to them. We may have to give instruction. So for example, if we're asking students, and I saw one of my world language people in there. So if we're asking students to show that they know how to conjugate a specific verb, we might have to give them a choice and explain to them. So think about it. How could I show that I know how to conjugate this verb? Do I need to do a flip grid or some kind of audio recording to show that I can pronounce it correctly? Or is it more about spelling and writing, and maybe I could do it in a slide or in a document, or maybe just write it on a piece of paper? So
yeah, so which medium fits the task at hand? And as Nancy was saying, sometimes students don't know how to do that. Certain students really like doing, and I keep going back to Flipgrid, but certain students really like doing Flipgrid, so they just want to do Flipgrid for everything. Sometimes Flipgrid is not the right choice. The video might not be the right choice, as Nancy was saying. If they have to show the spelling of it, then that's not going to be, you could, but you kind of want to, my internet is unstable, so I'm going to turn off my video on that one. There we go. So you kind of have to direct the students in a way that's inappropriate for them.
Absolutely. And sometimes, again, in order to help students become familiar with different types of platforms, you might want to sometimes not give them choice. Everybody's going to use this. Everybody's going to use Google Slide for this project. So we've given you some links if you'd like to do more research. Um, oh yeah, connecting to VAPA, Schoolhouse Rock, and we love that. We love having kids write their own songs. There are even platforms where kids can do that. So some of them are free, some of them are not. Thinking of Chrome Music Creator, kids can write their own songs. Yes, you will be given the slides. I put the link to it at the end, and it's somewhere up higher in the chat too. So there is information on helping students pick an appropriate medium and giving students direction in choosing how to show what they know. So those links will be on the slides for you if you'd like to research that further.
Okay, I lost audio there for a minute. Do you need me to move on? I'm back, but my internet's
I'd like you to
unstable.
move on. I'd like you to move on now.
And I moved on.
There you go. So bonus points if you recognize what that movie's from. I hope you all do. Anyway, so here are some options. Not everything is going to be appropriate for everybody, but we've kind of given you links where we could. So Flipgrid, obviously the TikTok template that Lisa was mentioning earlier. I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I am going to talk about a couple of them that you might not be familiar with. Screencastify, if you have not had your students do screen recordings, that's a really valuable way for them to explain their thinking. Holly Clark has been posting a lot lately about press record. So people are very concerned about the integrity of students' work and fidelity of assessment. So, because if a student is working at home, even if I have locked down their browser, because I have Chromebooks or something like that, or I have a paid something that goes with my LMS, I cannot lock down my student's house. I cannot lock down their phone. I cannot lock down their sibling. And so if they turn something in, one of the best things to have them do is then do a little screen recording or a recording on their phone or something like that, explaining how their thinking brought them to that point. So it's just a really great thing. I'm going to let Lisa talk about TouchCast.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I'm watching like the feed, and it is a great resource, and there's a lot on here to explore, and we understand that. So this is a compilation of like two of us doing this, and for you guys, anybody actually starting out in their classrooms, however we start off, in August or whatever, it's just take one and have your kids explore that. Just take one at a time and then just kind of build upon that. TouchCast is a really great one that my students were using the last, couple years now. It's a free iOS app. I used it on the iPads in my classroom, and we created daily morning announcements, but it had a green screen option to it. So we could quickly go into it, and I worked it out with my IT department, that we could film it, and on a good day, and that's a day that they weren't playing around. And if you've ever met 10-year-olds, like, they really like to play around after school. We could get it done in about 8 minutes. We had a routine. They would do the morning announcements. I didn't do anything. I always taught another student to do it, and they just went ahead and they would upload everything. So we had it all put together really nice and neat in a nice little package, and it would automatically load it up to our school's YouTube feed. So all the teachers had to do was go to the YouTube feed and click the next button. I highly recommend it. It doesn't just do green screen. Other green screen apps are Do Ink. Love Do Ink. And but it does other things. It has a whiteboard screen on it, so you could do how-to videos. It's just a really versatile tool. So if you have access to iPads, I highly recommend checking it out. Again, it is a free app. It does come with some other things, but don't have to buy those.
It is great. And I am a huge, huge fan of everything listed below TouchCast on that middle column. If you don't know Google Draw, you need to. It's a great way for students to create their own images, right?
It's so fantastic. I can't even
That's
tell
so
you.
right. I love Google Draw. Storyboard that is comics, but it is graphic novels. That's really great. Another great tool for English learners. And Adobe Spark. I cannot
Oh.
say enough about Adobe Spark.
And if y'all don't know what Adobe Spark is, ooh, you need to check it out. And if your school doesn't have it yet, ooh, you need to make them get it. It's free.
It's free, and it can be linked to your classroom. So let's go to the next slide, and then I want to address one of the questions that we saw in the chat.
All right. So we are also aware that there are schools that don't have technology. So when you're actually in the classroom, maybe you're sharing technology, or this spring, your schools, like mine, loaned out computers, and who knows what condition they are coming back in, and how many you're actually going to get back, and how many you have to replace. So there's all of that, like, ooh, that's going to be kind of tricky. How do we get around that issue? And also the issue that we don't always want students in front of a screen all the time. Like, we need them actually working with their hands. So here are some no tech options for you. So I had a student this year, I had two. So I had one student who he loved to build things. Like, if he could just sit there and like build things, he took these, had a marble run stuff in my classroom. He would take them every day, and then he would like create faces out of them. I mean, that wasn't an assignment. He would just do it for us. And I had another girl who just loved to draw, and she had the most amazing ability to shade things. So if they're given those options, they don't have to have the tech options all the time. And anybody likes to have those options. So it gives even more variety for them to do. So Nancy, you wanted to answer and address a question?
Yes. So there was a question about how to manage so many online tools for grading, and top 3 recommendations for short-term English learners. So how to manage the many online tools for grading is have a place where students can submit their work. Don't go out to all the places. Like, you could go to Flipgrid and look. You could go to Adobe Spark and look at what your kids have done. But it's better to have a single place where kids give the work to you. So that might be Google Classroom. It might be another LMS. If you don't have any kind of central place like that, it might just be a form where kids submit a link to their project to your email or something like that. But you need to have it all come in the same place. And to go back to what we were talking about before, that's where the rubric is helpful, because it doesn't matter if I made a magazine cover or an infographic or a video or a web page. The link is going to be in there. I'm going to have my rubric to see, did the student meet the requirements of this task? And that's how I can assess and give feedback. If you're doing distance learning, it might even be possible to do that with these no tech options. Because if I do a poster, a handmade poster or something like that, I can take a picture of it and upload it to whatever that online place is where my teacher is collecting work.
And that's great, because I actually did that during the distance learning time. I challenged some of my students, and you'll see that a little bit later, to do some things. And one of my students did choose to draw something, and she posted pictures of what she, of her completing, like, it was just a creativity assignment. So completing this creativity assignment.
Okay, and there was a question that came in. Choices for secondary math, and I will say my math teachers, it's hard because you can have all kinds of things for it's a lot easier to look at history or to look at even language arts or something like that. Math and science are a little more challenging. So there are tools like Desmos,
Yes.
where you could have students pick an equation from a topic. I had one teacher, I don't know if you're familiar with Freyer models. I had a teacher who
Well, you know, math reps
had
is also good for math, but I'm just gonna.
math reps is good, but it's good for math, but there's less. I'm talking about choice
No,
right
I think
now.
there are choices
There
in
are
there.
some choices in there, so
You,
definitely check out
yeah.
math reps. But he had his students do Freyer models, and they could pick
Hmm.
for vocabulary, and they could just choose any way that they wanted to demonstrate that they understood a concept of math vocabulary. Making a game is a good way to do it. Oh, and there's a Desmos
Desmos.
webinar coming up.
There's a lot of great
Um,
resources that are being put in the chat. Desmos, GeoGebra, Nearpod. I would also throw in Pear Deck. Yeah, a lot of great resources explain everything. Yeah. So, ooh, love Jamboard. Oh my God, I love Jamboard too.
Jamboard is great. I think that the key in offering choice in math is going to be to let students demonstrate their learning. I mean, there's less choice in the standards because you can't really say, well, you can pick whether you would like to understand parabolas or hyperboles. I mean,
No,
you
you
need to know
can't.
both, right? But you can give them a choice in how they demonstrate their learning of those
Yes.
items, right? So maybe I want to do a flip grid. Maybe I want to do some Google Slides and show, like using slide animation, I want to show the translation of my curve as it moves along when I change the variable, those kinds of things. Um,
Yeah.
so,
I'm just, and there's so many great
yeah.
resources in the chat and so many great ideas in there as well, showing exponential growth. I agree with Nancy wholeheartedly. Having, you know, them, you know, give a choice where the standards are, they're pretty straightforward. You don't have a choice in those. But being able to say, I'm going to do a how-to, or I'm going to create a crash course video on something, or any of those things to show how they broke down their learning. I think that is super powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just getting all these ideas, and of course, I'll have a lot more right after this is over. But I'm thinking, you know, going back to say curves, I could make a commercial or an advertisement for parabolas because those are the best curves. They are so much better than these other ones, and you know, if you allow kids to be creative, you'll be very surprised. And I comes to mind. Something that John Stevens, who wrote a book called The Classroom Chef, by the way, which is great, along with Matt Vaudry. John Stevens, one of his earliest things, he was a middle school math teacher, and they were talking about the 6 kinds of triangles, and he gave his students an assignment, which was demonstrate that you know the 6 kinds of triangles in a creative way. And he said especially his high achieving kids really just wanted to take the test. But he said, no, you have to demonstrate it. And if you go on YouTube and look for it, there is a triangle dating game because one of his kids made a dating game show. He said he got a dream catcher. He got little children's books. He got all kinds of things. And he said it was just so obvious that they all understood triangles and went deeper into the different kinds of triangles than they would have done. Yes, and they could create a song. So Lisa's suggesting, so there's lots of great resources in the chat. Oh, and model using mathematics. Exactly. So we have some time to demonstrate a few things. These were some that we thought you might like to see, but if there's something else that you would like, or if you'd like to ask any questions, now would be a good time for those things.
We'll just give you a couple minutes in the chat. And if there's one particular one you want to look at, I know which one is my current favorite one. Can you share TikTok template? Yes. It is almost the same as the Adobe Spark. No, as the Instagram post, Spark. Oh, good, because Spark is my favorite one. Yeah, so I'm gonna, let's see, jump out of here. Move that over there. Let's see, I'm gonna go back to this slide, go to the TikTok template. And hopefully my internet isn't super slow. No, it's not. Great. So I'm going to put this in the link or in the chat. And I don't want it to go to just Nancy. I want it to go to everybody. There we go. So you can also follow along too on this. All right, so this is just, so this is how you can do it. And so you can see he's given you the how-tos and everything. So essentially you just get a little template like this and do it. So let's go ahead and let me find it. Here it is, Instagram, Snapchat. What? All right, I should have had this loaded up. Well, we are where we are. So template to share with your students. And so it's going to ask you, it's going to force you to make a copy, and you say, yes, make a copy. Don't freak out. It's okay. A lot of times people will do this because if we don't, and you just get like the regular slide deck and you see it, you realize you can't edit. And so people then ask us for rights to edit, and we don't want to do that. That's like giving you my master copy. So if you ever see that, go ahead and just hit file, make a copy. Hey, Nancy, why don't you go ahead, and I'm going to stop sharing. And you can go ahead and share, because you said you had yours loaded up for Adobe.
Yes. So this is a video that I made during a previous webinar that we were giving, and it took me how long to make this? Maybe 5 minutes?
Maybe.
Basically, the way that Adobe Spark, this is Adobe Spark video, by the way. There's also Post where you can make graphic elements, resources like Facebook posts and those kind of images, and Instagram style images, as well as a single web page. But the Spark video allows you to take images and text and music and combine them in different ways. And one of the things that I really love about the video is at the end, you can upload your own images, of course, but they have a lot of images that are Creative Commons, that are allowed to be used, that are copyright friendly. And you can just search those right in the app. And when you are done, it creates a credit slide so you can teach your students about being responsible and ethical digital citizens without actually having to do any work at all. So here's the video that I made.
Nancy, I don't think we can hear the audio.
Oh,
If there's audio that accompanies it, I assume there is.
there is audio. There's music and explanation of the. Well, that's strange. When
Oh, good. I thought that was me and my computer and my internet again.
All right. Well, it was awesome. And you guys can click on the link because it is the one that's. But I can demonstrate how to do it. Let's see. Real quick, spark.adobe.
It's a Zoom thing.
That's okay. I got to move this so I can sign in.
You know, and so tech issues happen. So if you're, you know, a studying teacher and these things happen to you, and they will happen to you, just go with it, embrace it.
Okay, so basically it's super easy to create a project. You just, and we're going to go quickly because we have a whole other part of our presentation that we want to be sure to get to. but you just click video, and then it's going to be a title. I'm going to start from scratch because I don't like other people telling me what to do with their templates. And it takes a minute to load up, and then I'm going to be able, so I have my choices here. I can add voiceover. It's super easy. I can add a photo. I can upload my own or find free ones. Let's say I want to find a picture of puppies because puppies. And
Puppies
then
is always safe.
Right? And they're adorable. So I can click on this. I can edit him, make him smaller so I can see everything there. And then I can click this to add a voiceover, and you can see here the credits slide was automatically created. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually stop sharing because we only have 10 minutes left.
What? That's crazy.
I know.
And you were
we
worried
wanna
about
be
time.
Sure. I don't want to tell Lisa she can't share she can't share the TikTok video template, but it is a template.
But she's telling me I can't share it, is what she's saying.
Well, do we want to go through here, or do we want? Let's show the platforms, and if we have time, we'll come back.
Absolutely.
But yeah. And I want to add too that if you do have tech issues during teaching, be honest about it with your students too. And, you know, if you're in the classroom, sometimes they may be able to provide assistance. That's okay. You don't need to be the all-knowing holder of knowledge.
Ask them to help you figure it out. That actually helps things go a little bit faster as well.
Definitely. All right. So let's talk about picking a platform.
Let's talk picking a platform quickly. All right. So as you can see, you know, it helps to allow for, like, depending on the audience that you want. Sometimes, you know, especially like in elementary school. You can't see my screen?
Yeah, but if you click present, it'll be bigger and they'll be able to see better.
Hi. Present. Thanks. This is why I keep Nancy around. She keeps me, like, she reminds me what I'm supposed to be doing.
Is that why?
Well, that and you're pretty awesome.
Thank you.
So, you know, sometimes for elementary students, depending on your school district, they don't want things going out, and, you know, some parents don't want things going out on the World Wide Web. Wow. Hi, it's 1997 all over again. So, you know, maybe the audience is just like the classmates or the school, and you can share it within the school. So, like, that gives them a little bit more reason to try a little bit harder to, like, actually put in the effort, because, you know, when it's just you, the teacher, they're like, whatevs. You see, I work with 10-year-olds all the time. You know, but my school was open, Lisa, and so
I don't know if we're seeing, I'm not seeing your slide. If you've moved ahead.
No, I'm still on student choice platform.
Okay.
With all the bullet points?
No, I don't see any bullet points.
Let me, the joys of living in the middle of nowhere. All right, so let me stop sharing. And then we are not seeing the slides. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna try that again. Usually if I just do this and share. Can you see the slide now?
No.
Nothing. Well, this is just fantastic.
Oh, there they are.
And I just stopped.
All right, I'll share mine. It's fine.
All right, because clearly I'm having internet issues.
Okay, so they're the slides.
Thanks, Nancy.
Hopefully you guys can see them. So we were supposed to be here. I don't know if you guys were able to see that, but yes, your audience can look different depending on your age group and your ability to share and what your privacy setting, your privacy issues are, because obviously we need to protect students' identities. Some parents may be more comfortable than others allowing their students to share online. that tends to loosen up as kids get older, but not always. So let's see.
There we go.
Sorry. And so here are some options for platforms. And Flipgrid is a platform as well as a medium. And we wanted to just kind of explain that to you. Also, Anchor app is a platform as well as a medium. That's because those are ways for students to show what they know, but they also provide a way for you to share student creations with the wider world. So I can share, as a student, I can create something that shows what I know by recording a podcast in Anchor, for example. But then I can use Anchor app to share that podcast with the public or with my school or something like that. So that's why those items are listed in both places.
Right. And Sabrina says that most platforms have parent permission forms that you can send home. My district sends home a blanket form at the beginning of the year, which does cover all of these things, so long as I'm doing it under the classroom and within the school, with that I register things with the platforms with the school, or under my school account, so they can use it that way too. But I do always contact the parents and let them know what's going on, so that they have a right to say, no, I don't want my child to do that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a good idea if you can. It is true that they have those forms, but if you're going to be using many different platforms, sometimes getting back all those and managing all those permission slips can be challenging. So it can be good to create something at the beginning of the year saying, we're going to be using this, this, and this here, and give everything at once. Now, you may not know, and you may need to add something later. If you're in California, you also have the ability to consent in loco parentis, but be sure to check with your district office to find out what they're okay with you consenting to. And that brings up, for example, YouTube. You may have a teacher channel where you put the student videos, and the viewing of that may be private, only to invited people. Older students, high school kids, may have their own channel. And you may choose to just share videos through Google Drive or Dropbox or some other way. And again, we have some no-tech options for you. So kids can do a performance, or you can do a gallery walk, printed newsletter, those kinds of things.
And those are important too, like we were saying before, to show student work, because maybe students want to share something and the parents don't have the ability to view it. So in order to keep equity at the forefront of our minds, these are some options that we felt were really good.
Okay. And then Lisa had another setup for a choice board.
So this was a choice board that I created when we went to distance learning, and I'm going to go quickly because I see that we are running short on time. How can children create a project working with peers? I think it depends on the platform and the medium that you use. So if you want to choose a project that they're working with peers, for example, the Anchor app, they can do that together in a group. Looking at this particular one, these were just creation ideas that I had my students do. And I said, if you guys wanted to get together and do a podcast, they could do it virtually. With the Anchor app, it would just do the voice tracks, and I would help them. Again, this was not a group this year that wanted to do that. Blog, they could have co-created a story together. So there are ways definitely that they can work with their peers in order to do this. So go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, also, if you are a Google district, Google Docs and slides and those kind of things have collaborative options. Some of the Office 365, I believe, also has that. I'm going to skip ahead just so that you can see. These were Lisa's distance learning, but I know we only have 1 minute left. So quick time for questions. And then we wanted to thank you.
And give a shameless plug.
And give a shameless plug for our twice monthly podcast. It's only 15 minutes because you don't have any more time than that to listen, and we don't have any more time than that to make this podcast. So, but you can even come on and be a guest.
Would love that.
Yes. So questions in the, if there, I see there are things in the chat. They're all thank yous. Oh, you guys, that's so nice. Well, if you do have questions afterwards and you have the slides, I have an email on there. Lisa and I both have our websites. You can contact us there.
Somebody
or hit
asked
us
if
up
our
on Twitter.
podcast is on Twitter. Yes, our podcast is on Twitter. It's hashtag Ninja Teachers. And what is our Twitter handle? I think
It's at TLC Ninja.
TLC Ninja.
It's at TLC Ninja, and we have an episode coming out tomorrow. Ben Cogswell and talking about learning young learners, and we may have a special bonus episode coming out as well tomorrow. So,
Nancy, are there tutorials on how to use Adobe Spark?
There are lots of tutorials on how to use Adobe Spark. If you look through YouTube, I'm happy to help you out with any of that, but I will tell you, it is so easy to use. You probably won't need them. If you just go in there and start playing, you will be amazed at how easy it is. They have some tutorials on their website as well.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies, Lisa and Nancy. I think this was amazing. There were so many resources you presented, and I can just see from all the comments that people really got a lot out of this. And then we'll look forward, I think, to using your slides and clicking on the links and exploring more and taking off from there. So I really wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank all the participants for attending. You will be receiving an email later with feedback form and also with the resources available. So you can see the recording and also the slides. And I wanted to remind you there is a debrief Zoom session right now that we will be starting for half an hour to just kind of process and go through this and share ideas with each other. So if you would like to join that, Brian had sent out the Zoom link for that as well. Just takes us maybe like a few minutes to get that started because we have to wrap up this call first and then we'll be there. So anyway, thank you everybody. Appreciate all the knowledge shared today, and I'm going to be exploring lots of new things. So this is awesome. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Nancy, can you throw in the link to this this thing?